The Eyes of the White Horse by Ned Dahan, the audiobook, made available on Black Box Online Radio. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 12. 1 month had gone by since the murder of Officer McGrady and Barry's encounter with the White Horse Killer. It was now late October, and the trees in the forests of Jonestown were filled with red and orange leaves. The scent of autumn was in the air, but Barry couldn't forget that moment when he had plunged his black folding knife into the stomach of the White Horse Killer. He thought about it every day, whenever Joanna was not talking to him or he was not discussing his job as the facilities manager. The mental picture of the stabbing came back. Officer Jackson had driven them to the police station that night. Barry was allowed to wash his hands. Then he was taken to an interrogation room. Joanna had been interrogated separately. For a short time the members of law enforcement were talking to Barry as if he had done something wrong to Officer McGrady. However, they quickly abandoned that theory. It was obvious in retrospect, and even members of the local police department figured it out. Barry did not have a car, and Joanna didn't have one either. They didn't have a way to drive out to the Pennsylvania woods late at night. Officer McGrady had been shot and killed inside his own police car, which stayed behind near Barry's motel room. The firearm that was found next to Barry on the side of the road also didn't match the ballistics from the one that killed Officer McGrady, although Barry would learn that later. This confirmed Joanna's suspicion that the White Horse Killer had more than one gun. Barry had also thought that this was an odd thing on its own. If the White Horse Killer had another firearm in the car, the gun with the silencer, why didn't he just shoot and kill Barry and Joanna before he drove away? Was it because he was injured and didn't want to waste a second? Was he afraid that Barry would have shot back with the killer's own .45? It didn't make sense, but Barry couldn't unravel the thinking of this madman. The members of the Jonestown PD had dealt with Barry many times. He had even reported the Soft Eyes Killer to them. To Barry's surprise, they apologized, and they stated that they should have taken the threats more seriously. They also became aware that both Barry and Joanna had been stalked by either a killer or a group of killers. The authorities had not forgotten the events from earlier that year with the Red Horse Killer, who had abducted Joanna and tied her up in a motel room in Frederick, Maryland. They could clearly see now that someone was after Joanna and Barry. The worst part was that it was not one person. The White Horse Killer's influence was evolving. More and more copycats were taking shape. First the Red Horse, next the Soft Eyes Killer, then what would happen by November? Barry shuddered to think. As Officer Jackson, the emotionless man, had driven them to the police station, Barry noticed that his expressionless ways did not stay that way for long. Barry and Joanna had both attended the funeral service for Officer McGrady, and Officer Jackson spoke at the funeral. He presented himself in a much more emotional manner. Barry realized that perhaps he had been in a state of shock because his friend had been shot. McGrady had been killed that night, and it seemed that they were close. It was a cold October night now, 12 days before Halloween. Barry sat in the chair at the Jonestown motel, waiting for Joanna to come home from Cheetah Mart. Barry didn't want to take any chances. If Joanna didn't get a ride home from her colleagues, he would walk to Cheetah Mart and escort her home. He also bought a new knife from the Army surplus store, and he never went out without the 2 folding knives in his pockets. Barry heard Joanna's signature knock on the door. He opened it for her, and she entered with her long blonde hair still tied up underneath the black baseball cap she had to wear for work. The only thing out of the ordinary was she was wearing an orange witch's hat on top of the baseball cap, which she removed with a ceremonial gesture. "Trick or treat," she teased. "Happy early Halloween, my love," she said as she had greeted Barry with a kiss. He didn't completely know why she was always in a good mood since the events with the White Horse Killer. He just hoped that she was glad that they were over, but Joanna had been in a cheerful manner for a solid month. "So," she began, The only thing that I could get us tonight was 2 tuna sandwiches. I know they're on white bread and you like wheat or bagels because you said they have more substance to them, but this is all we have. I also got us 2 Diet Dr. Peppers. It's been ages since we've had Dr. Pepper, and I forgot what it tasted like. Michaela at work was telling me that Dr. Pepper was prune flavored, and I was like, what? No, that's not true. I mean, it's not true, right? I don't think so, said Barry. I think that's an urban myth. Hey, she interjected. What's got you down? I can tell something is different with you. I mean, I know what it is, but things don't. Anyway, let's eat our tuna sandwiches. Barry and Joanna kissed again. Late that night they were in bed again with the TV on. It was still running a news channel with the volume on mute, as they normally did. Barry and Joanna were on their phones, and Joanna was smiling and giggling to herself. How can she be like that? Barry thought silently. 24/7. Then almost, as the words went through his internal monologue, Joanna's facial expression changed. Barry was hoping that she had not been able to read his mind. Hey, she said in a more somber tone. Barry, look at this. What is it? He asked. Barry edged closer to her under the white motel blanket. I was just on Facebook watching Reels, she started. I follow Martin's page, his Facebook page, not the personal one, just the page for truecrimegovernment.com. He puts out updates daily about stuff, and I don't really read those things, but look, he posted something about the White Horse Killer. Am I reading this right? Barry's eyes scanned the post on Facebook. The White Horse Killer was not Manny Inman. He read out loud, What the fuck? Barry glanced down at the motel floor. Then his eyes moved up toward the ceiling. What does it say in the article? Barry asked Joanna. She began to tap the link to open it. She read it over for herself in about 10 seconds. Then she shared the message with Barry. After another suspicious night in Pennsylvania, she began, the police in a small dot on the earth called Jonestown now believe that the man sitting in jail for the White Horse killings may not be the actual killer. After the emergence of a blatant White Horse Killer copycat in the spring of this year, is it possible that the White Horse Killer of 5 years ago has returned? Is it possible that Emmanuel Inman, the man convicted, may have been innocent the whole time? After the discovery of the still unidentified human remains in Jonestown, Pennsylvania, and a series of suspicious accusations from 2 people who claim to have been stalked by the real White Horse Killer, the authorities in Jonestown are now entertaining a narrative that perhaps Emmanuel Inman was not the right guy, or at the very least, he had accomplices. Shit, said Barry in a flat tone. Is this good or bad? Joanna asked Barry. Barry could tell from Joanna's voice that she knew it was bad, so he didn't lose his temper. It's bad, he elaborated. The White Horse Killer reads truecrimegovernment.com. He said that the first time that I met him here in the parking lot. He also liked the fact that Manny Inman was convicted for the crimes, so there was no threat of him being caught. Joe, do you really believe the Jonestown police would have made a statement like that? Yes, I do, she answered. I mean, we told them. We told them all of this. We said someone calling himself the White Horse Killer killed McGrady and drove us out to the woods that night. I don't think that's normal for police departments, said Barry. If a case is closed, I wouldn't expect them to make a public statement like this. I mean, because of a rumor. Does Martin say who told him this info? No, she replied. I read everything that is posted here. It's a short post, like a blurb or something. Do you think this is going to provoke the killer into doing something? Barry stood up and began to pace around the motel room. Yeah, I do, Barry exhaled. I do. This is not good. When will Martin Gill learn to keep his mouth shut or his fingers off the keyboard? When will he learn that this story needs to die? He needs to let it die. The White Horse Killer feeds off of attention. He has always been like that. The letters, the cipher codes, the phone calls, the threats. He's a sad, lonely man who probably had one friend. One friend who knew the secret. Then that friend committed a murder because he wanted to see what it was like, to experience it firsthand. So the White Horse Killer had to silence him. Barry, said Joanna. What is it? Barry stopped walking.
I don't think that's true, she responded.
Why not? He asked.
I don't think the Soft Eyes killer murdered anyone, she revealed. I mean, Martin scours the true crime news, and he posts updates about everything, and he was also looking for a specific murder in the Pennsylvania and Maryland areas of a woman strangled by a rope, where murder was the only objective. He didn't find anything the whole time. I mean, I see his posts all the time. This is just the first one that I've read recently, on his website anyway. I mean, he was always paying attention. I was always paying attention for something.
Well, what does this mean? Barry inquired in a gentle way.
I think you're half right, she answered. I think the White Horse and the Soft Eyes knew each other. I think that the Soft Eyes wanted to be a copycat, but it's just like Robbie Watterson and the Red Horse Killer prank. He wanted to pretend to be a serial killer. He wanted to do the calls and make up the number code or whatever that thing was. But I don't see any evidence that the Soft Eyes actually killed anyone.
Then why would the White Horse Killer murder him? Barry asked.
You said it yourself, Joanna returned. I think they did know each other. I do think that they were friends, maybe even best friends as you put it, and I think the White Horse Killer got scared when he learned about the prank calls that this person was making to us, and that, well, there's something else.
What? Barry asked. What is it?
I don't think they're American, Joanna answered.
What? What do you mean? Barry asked. Well, they're certainly not British, or they didn't sound like that anyway, or anything else like that at all.
Please, take it easy, she insisted in a firm way. I've been thinking about this for some time now. I mean, it's been a month since they found the head of the Soft Eyes in the ditch down the road, and they have not been able to identify him. I mean, there is no evidence left behind. You'd think if he were a resident of the area, they would be looking at dentists and dental records and getting those records and doing something with them. No family member has identified him.
Well, Joanna, Barry started. I know I'm not Martin Gill and I can't rattle off every true crime story known to man, but why would that mean that they're not American? I mean, people go unidentified for years. They also find partial remains, and it takes like 20 or 30 years to make an identification. Why do you think they're not American?
I guess that's fair, she conceded,
though Barry could tell that was not a sincere concession.
I guess, Joanna started again, I guess that I was just thinking that maybe they were from somewhere else, like Canada, or something, maybe just foreigners who could speak really good English. I mean, doesn't it surprise you that a month has gone by and they don't have a single clue who the Soft Eyes was?
Actually, it surprises me, Barry answered, but what surprises me more is that they didn't find any other human remains. Just the head.
I just don't think they're from around here, she went on. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said anything about them being Canadian, but that's what came to mind.
It's not a bad idea, said Barry, as he moved to a seated position on the bed. But I think there's something more pressing right now.
What is it?
Joanna asked. The White Horse Killer is still nearby, he proclaimed. I think he's going to find that message. He's going to see that post. This is going to provoke him into doing something. That's the way he operates. Joanna looked toward the floor on her own side of the motel bed.
Are you sure, Barry? She asks. We don't know what happened to the White Horse Killer. Maybe he's dead.
Am I sure? Barry muttered in response. I mean, Joe, they didn't find the body. They didn't find the car. They didn't find a vehicle with a trail of blood. Yeah, I stabbed him. I mean, I can't... Well, you know what I did, but I don't think he died. They would have found something.
No one turned up at a hospital, she pointed out. I mean, Barry, we don't know what happened, but I would expect that if you claimed that you stabbed the murderer of Officer McGrady, and 1 hour later somebody showed up at the nearest hospital with 7 stab wounds in the gut, they'd get suspicious.
You're right, Joanna, said Barry. He moved closer to her.
I hope not, she said. I hope he's dead. If he dies, all of this will end. But if he didn't go to a hospital, what did he do?
No idea, said Barry. Maybe he was a former army medic and he knew how to stop the bleeding on his own.
Maybe, she replied.
Anyway, let's not talk about him anymore, Barry decided. I just wish that Martin hadn't posted that stuff on his website.
Okay,
said Joanna. Barry and Joanna closed their eyes. Outside, it was a cold October night, but to both their surprise, they slept without a single moment of interruption. Barry woke up the next morning and he decided to grab his phone from the nightstand table. Joanna was fast asleep next to him, and her eyes were closed, but facing Barry. She wasn't snoring, but he could hear her breathing. Barry decided to check truecrimegovernment.com to see if there was anything new. He knew there would be at this time. Martin had posted yesterday, and he knew that the White Horse Killer could not resist. Barry almost felt as if he were inside the White Horse Killer's mind. He knew it. There on the top of Martin's website read the headline, "A new White Horse Killer letter has arrived." Barry was blank, and he wasn't mad or scared, for he knew that this would happen. As Joanna slept, he wanted to read the letter first. Martin had posted the text of the White Horse Killer's letter. It had been sent to the WBBR radio station back in Maryland, which was the White Horse Killer's favorite chosen recipient. Before Barry could read the text of the letter, he saw that it had not been mailed. Instead, it had been placed on the doorstep of the radio station's office, and a large white rock had been used as a weight to hold it down. It was discovered by the first person on site that morning. The handwritten letter read, "To the hosts and production crews, tell the mayor that I'm back with you. I have always been with you. That fool Emmanuel Inman has nothing on me. He never did. I was going to act in secret, in the shadows, but I couldn't let all of these phonies have all the glory. My glory. The red horse, the soft eyes, the head in the ditch. They are fake, and I am real. To announce my return, I shot a copper in a parked car with a .38. Then I gave an interesting ride to 2 clowns from my past. I am back, and I am alive and well. Cooper's white horse is in me, and it is running wild. The White Horse Killer, 76-47-300, 8703, BRCHALLA, HY, You thought I was dead? No way.